So in C++, the major data type that you find is the class, right? Class and object, right? It is an ADT class. What is class? It is an ADT. It is a combination of data and functions. It is declared with class keyword followed by class name terminated with a semicolon, right? So the syntax of this class, you can say class followed by space followed by class name, and you can have inside this class data and functions, right? The open brace and the close brace, right? This represents the block, right? So the block of the class, right? In the block, you have the data and functions. So the scope of the data and the functions is limited to this particular block, we say, right? Scope in the sense, the part of the text in which it is accessible is said to be its scope, right? So the scope of the data and functions that you have declared inside this particular block is restricted to this particular block itself. It means if you are trying to access this particular data and function outside this block, you are not able to access it, right? But with certain privileges like access specifier taking into consideration, rather, right? So both this data and functions are said to be the members of the class, right? The classes are accessed with a membership operator called dot, right? So these members are declared with certain scope, which is said to be the access specifier, right? So the data can be accessed outside the class as well, but provided with certain access specifiers, right? So what are the different access specifiers we have? We said that private, public, and protected, right? By default, it is private. If you do not mention the specifier, it is considered to be the private. Okay. Private members are accessed only within the class, we say, right? Public members are accessed within the class, within its derived classes, and through the object as well. The protected members are accessed within the class and within its derived classes only. It means it cannot be accessed within the with the object of that particular class. Fine. So through the object, you can access only the public members. Since the functions have to be invoked by the user, and the user will create only the objects, and he will be able to access the functions only when the functions are declared as public. So that is the reason why we declare the functions as always public, right? If you look at the class declaration, you will find class name, and in which you can find some data. Under public mode, you define the functions. You declare the functions, right? So data is generally declared under private in order to provide the data hiding concept, and functions are declared under public mode, right? Creating an instance of a class is what's said to be the instantiation, right? So how do you create an instance? Class name followed by space followed by object name. Like how you create any variable of built-in kind, like integer, character, and all kind of thing. What do you say? Int space and then the variable name. Similarly, so in place of the data type, you are mentioning the class name, because class name is going to act as an ADT, right? It's a data type kind, right? So you want to create an instance or nothing but a variable of that kind. How do you do that? At class name space variable or nothing but the object name, right? And for example, if you have a student class, how do you create an object of a student class? Student space s. And if you have certain functions also to that particular student class, let us say read and display, how do you access them? With the help of membership operator called dot, right? S dot, right? Read s dot display, right? Now coming to the different object-oriented programming system features, basically, which are when being satisfied by the programming language. We say it's an object-oriented programming language, are encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, data abstraction, data hiding, and visual abstraction, right? So encapsulation, what is meant by encapsulation? It is a wrapping. It is covering, wrapping up of data and functions into a single entity called class is what's said to be the encapsulation. Encapsulation is a concept, right? So which can be implemented with the help of class concept, right? And of course, inheritance we'll see probably in the further classes, and polymorphism we'll also see that in the further classes, right? Fine. So data abstraction, hiding the non-essential data, the implementation detail from the user is said to be the abstraction. For example, functions. Functions are defined certain code, and they will be, invoked with a name, rather, right? So it's a kind of abstraction only, right? Procedural abstraction, we say it is, right? And you have, let us say, for example, data which is being hidden inside the class when you declare under private mode, right? So they can be accessed only within the class. It means you can be able to access within its functions, right? So that it means something like you are hiding the data from the user, which is said to be data hiding, right? Or data abstraction as well. For example, in C language also you can find abstraction, data abstraction, floating, right? Float data. So how do you declare the float data? You just say float space the variable name, but you don't know how much part of the float memory which has been assigned to that particular variable is allocated for mantissa and exponent, because the float numbers are represented with two parts, mantissa part and exponent part, right? So how much basically float takes 4 bytes, we say, right? Even in C++ also we have float data type, which will take 4 bytes. So out of this 4 bytes, how many bytes are going to be allocated for mantissa part, and how many are going to be allocated for exponent part is going to be based on the manufacturer, processor manufacturer, rather, right? So which is being hidden from the user, which is said to be abstraction itself, rather, right? Floating point abstraction or floating data abstraction, right? So that kind of abstraction, basically in any programming language you can find the abstraction is available, rather, right? So abstraction generally you find in 3 different aspects, right? One is the data abstraction, like for example hiding the essential details that are associated with that particular aspect of data. For example, floating kind, right, is also said to be the data abstraction. And class is also said to be the data abstraction, abstract data, because you have data, you have functions, all that being hidden from the user, rather, right? How much data, how many functions are there inside the particular class, which is being hidden from the user. Also said to be the data abstraction, right? Data abstraction concept you are able to implement in C++ with the help of classes as well, right? Of course, in C you may have seen float data type, you may have implemented already data abstraction, right? And data hiding. When you come to data hiding, you are hiding the data with the help of declaring the data under private mode, rather being hidden from the user, right? Which cannot be accessible from the object, right, to the user, rather, right? Which is said to be data hiding. Procedural abstraction is something like when you are using functions, what kind of operation that function carries is being hidden from the user. User is going to just invoke it with the help of a function name, that's it, right? He does not know what kind of instruction they are inside to help you out in getting that respective operation being executed, rather, right? Which is said to be the procedural abstraction. Similarly, you have another kind of abstraction is said to be the control abstraction. Control abstraction in the sense that the control is going to be moved when you're calling a function. What happens? The control is going to be moved from the calling function to call function, and after the processing get done, the call control will be returned from call function to calling function. So every time you have, for example, you have a for loop, you have a while loop, you have some recursive functions, you have certain control statements, right? If while, if for while, do while, or switch case, all this kind of control statement. When you see where the control is going to be switched from one instruction to another instruction, which is being hidden from the user, rather, right? This is said to be the control abstraction, right? So there are generally 3 types of abstractions that you find in programming language. One is data abstraction, procedural abstraction, and the control abstraction. So coming to C++, data abstraction is being provided at the higher level, that is said to be the class level. Of course, you have at the floating float data type also you have abstraction available, like how you have it in C. It means at the data level, at the built-in level. But then at the class level also you can find the data abstraction. Class is considered to be the data, because of which we say it is a data abstraction, right? But again, in class you have certain functions also, right? So function is going to provide you the procedural abstraction, the functional abstraction. And then you have control statements, and the control is always going to be switched between one statement to another statement. So you find control abstraction as well all the time, rather, right? Now, coming to scope resolution operator, basically the scope resolution operator will help you to bind the functions of a class when you write the source code of the function outside of the class, right? Notifying the compiler that this particular function belongs to that respective class, kind of thing. Not only that, it probably help you sometimes to access a particular variable when reallocated. In order to access the global, allocation of the same, you can use this scope resolution operator, right? We'll probably see, incoming classes, its uses, right? So one use already we have seen, like how the scope resolution operator will help you to bind the functions to a respective class, right? How do you do that? For example, you have a class, followed by class name. You have certain data inside, and you have some certain function. You want to write the code of this particular function outside the class. What do? You just mention the function prototype inside the class, right? Function prototype carries what? Return type, function name, and arguments. You just mention that, right? And then outside the class, you are going to write the source code of the function. So when you write the source code of the function outside the class, and to tell the compiler that this function belongs to that particular respective class, how do you do that? You mention the return type of the function, then followed by the class name, scope resolution operator, then function name, followed by arguments. So now, with the help of this scope resolution operator, what compiler could identify that this function is going to belong to this particular class name, right? That way, whatever the code you write, rather it is as if you are writing the function source code inside the class itself, right? Now coming to constructors, right? Constructors basically are used to initialize the object, right? So it is a function, you can say, declared under public mode, used to initialize members of a class, right? It is used to initialize the object. You can say it is implicitly called whenever an object is created, right? Constructors you can classify into three kinds: default, parameterized, and copy constructor. So you can see here, default constructor is the one which does not take any arguments, right? The rules for writing the constructor, if you see, constructor name must be the same as that of the name of the class. It is a function with non-return type specification. It is declared under public mode, right? So these three rules you can find are essential and probably in all kind of constructors, right? And you can see the syntax of the default constructor. If you have certain class like class followed by class name, you have the certain data inside it. Then the constructor generally you define under the public mode, rather, right? So you can declare the prototype inside, and you can write the source code outside of it, rather, right? So when you mention the prototype inside, what do you mention inside? Under the public mode, you have to prototype carries no return type. There is no return type specification at all. You have function name. Function name or constructor name is same as that of the class name. It means if you have class name, same class name. Then followed by arguments. But since it is default, it doesn't have any argument. So this is the prototype of the default constructor. Now, when you want to define the code for this particular default constructor outside the class, how do you define? With the help of scope resolution operator, right? You don't have return type specification at all, so you don't mention here. Followed by the class name, scope resolution operator, then you have the constructor name is class name, right? That's it. Now you can define the code. But constructor basically being used to initialize the data, rather, right? So generally, constructors are used to initialize the members of the class, right? Probably we'll see with an example all these things together in a single program, right? Now coming to parameterized constructor. Constructor which will have the parameters, rather, is said to be the parameterized constructors, right? The constructor having parameters is said to be the parameterized constructor. The rules for writing the parameterized constructor is very similar to that of the default constructor. You can see the first one is constructor name must be the same as that of the class name, and it is a function with parameters and non-return type specification. It also does not have a return type specification, but it will have the parameters. It is declared under public mode, right? For example, if you want to declare, a parameter with the help of syntax, here I have specified. You can see in this example, class followed by class name, data under public mode. You are mentioning the prototype of the constructor here. So the first rule is it must be the same as that of the class name. So class name, if it is a class name, then the constructor name is also class name. You don't have parameter, you don't have the return type at all, and it is declared under public mode, and you have certain parameters, right? So now you can see here, when you are writing the source code outside, you will be binding it with the help of scope resolution operator in order to notify the compiler these this particular parameters constructor belong to this, right? So since there is no return type, so you don't mention here, then you write the class name, scope resolution operator, then you write the constructor name, parameters, right? Then basically the constructor are being used to initialize the member. So the parameters which you have taken, rather they are inputs probably. So the data inside the class which are considered to be the inputs for which you can rather pass the parameters, and the same can be initialized in that particular parameterized constructor. Now coming to copy constructor, there is another kind of constructor you can rather have in the class, and you can have all these three constructors together in the same class as well, right? So now coming to copy constructor, it is used to copy the objects, right? It takes the object reference as an argument, right? So now looking at the rules, constructor name is same as that of the class name. This must be same as for all, of course. It is a function with non-return type specification. This is also same for all, but having an argument. And what is that argument? It is declared under public mode, and the argument must be the reference of the same class. Okay, you can see it is having an object reference as an argument of the same class, right? So now you can look at the syntax of the same class followed by class name, data you have, then the prototype of the copy constructor you are mentioning inside the class. So there is no return type, the same as sort of the class name you have, the constructor name, declared under public mode, the same class reference you can take as an argument. And when you are writing the source code outside, there is no return type, class name, scope resolution operator, then class name followed by the same class reference, you can see, right? So here basically, as you know, that the constructors are being used to initialize the data. So the reference that you have passed is going to be initialized to the object to which this particular constructor being called, right? It means something like an object which you are passing through this particular constructor as an argument is going to initialize to the object to which this particular constructor is being called, right? So the object which is being passed is going to be copied to the object for which this particular constructor is being called, right? So now all this together we'll see with an example, and I wanted to add one more thing in the example that I can go with only 20 slides here. I have to start another. Trying to demonstrate all this constructors, classes, object concept, right? With the help of a student example, you can see, I hope all of you can see my screen here. I have already written here. So the class name I have given as student. Class name I have given student. The student class consists of, you can see student number, and 3 subject marks are being represented with an array here. Okay, and total, to calculate total, and you have student name, and you have average to calculate average. Fine. This is the default constructor here, right? Because you don't have any arguments, you can see the name of the function is same as that of the class name, declared under public mode, no arguments, no return type specification. This is default constructor, and this is parameterized constructor. Why? Because it is having parameters, and the parameters that I have passed here, which are required as the inputs for this particular object, right? The inputs are number, name, and 3 subject marks, right? So number is integer, name is a string, and marks is an array, right? Integer array. So these 3 are passing as an arguments, right? So you can see this parameters constructor is also having the same as that of the name of the class, declared under public mode, no return type specification, and having parameter, right? And now this is said to be the parameterized constructor, right? And the second, the last one is said to be the copy constructor, right? So you can see why I'm saying it's a copy constructor, because you can see the function name is same as that of the class name, no return type specification, declared under public mode, and having an argument right? The argument is, you can see the same class reference, right? So the reference object that you pass as an argument will be copied into the object for which this particular constructor being called, right? So, and this is the destructor. We'll probably see after I explain you anyway. Then I have the read function here and calc display. Read the details if you want to read with your desired values. You can probably read, and then you can calculate and display with the help of calc display function. So this is all about the student class here. This is the ADT essay, right? Class is said to be ADT, abstract data type, right? Consists of data and function. We have mentioned all the function prototype inside. We didn't mention the code of the same. We are writing the code of these functions outside of the class, right? So we can see outside of the function, outside of the class here, we are writing the code of all these functions, starting with the default constructor first here. So student, how do you write? No return type specification starts straight away with the class name, scope of the operator, then function name is nothing but the class name itself. Since it is default, no parameters. Now inside this, what is that code that you're having to initialize the data of the class, right? What is the data you have? Number, name, marks array, total, and average, right? So number you have initialized with 24, name you have initialized with Pradeep, and you have initialized all three subject marks with 0, total and average to be 0, right? Now coming to the parameters constructor, this is said to be the parameterized constructor, right? This is said to be the parameters constructor. Why? It is having the parameter. So when you are writing the source code of the function outside the class, what do? You mention the return type. You don't have return type, then follow the class name, then then function name. Is in the class name itself. Then you are mentioning the parameter. Here I am taking the parameters which are required to be the inputs of that particular respective class. So inside this class, what are the inputs? Basically, S number, name, and 3 subject marks are the inputs. So I have taken only they are the inputs, and they are being initialized. So in this A, I have taken it for S number, so I have initialized S number. This B, I have taken it for S name, so I have copied it in S name with the help of a string copy function. Then the C array, which I am passing at the time of instantiation, of course, right? I have taken it for 3 subject marks, which I am copying it into the marks, right? And total and average are initialized to 0. Then here you can see the copy constructor I have defined. So the no return type, class name, scope resolution operator. Then you have the function name, but the class name itself, and it is taking one reference object as an argument. What is the reference object? The same class name, right? So you passed it, student and reference. So what all you have inside the members of that respective object being referred by this particular reference are to be copied into the object to which this particular constructor being called, right? So when I say S number, S name, these members are referring to whom? The object to which this particular constructor being called. When I say ref dot S number means the object which you have passed as an argument, right? So the object which you have passed as an argument are going to be simply copied, right, into the object to which this particular copy constructor is being called, right? So reference dot S number being copied into S number, reference dot S name to be copied in S name, and reference dot MI is going to be copied in M of I. Then you can see the total and average also being copied. And you can see here, forget about this destructor. Yeah, coming to read function again. If you want to read some desired values, you can read through the read function here, and you have calc display function to display after being calculated, total and average. So you are seeing here, you can see you are calculating the total, and then you are calculating that. Anyway, total is being initialized at the time of instantiation in the constructor itself. I don't think this is required. You can probably remove this particular statement now, right? Right. So you're calculating the total and average and displaying the same. Now inside the main function, you can see here, I've taken one array. At the time of declaration itself, I have initialized the array with the 87, 98, and 78 value. 3 subject marks, and I'm creating one object OP1, right? So for this object, what constructor is going to be called, right? We are not passing any arguments. So here for OB1, when OB1 is created, what happens? For OB1, memory is going to be allocated. How much memory is going to be allocated? Required for S number, S name, marks array, right? And total and average, right? Got it. Now, what happens for this OB1? The default constructor is going to be called, right? Why? Because you are not passing any parameter. You have 3 constructors. Default, you have parameterize, you have copy. Fine. So when you create an object, one of the 3 constructors is going to be called. If you are not passing any parameters, default will be called. If you are passing parameters, parameters will be called. If you are passing object, then copy constructor is going to be called. So when here you can look at the default constructor is being called. Inside default constructor, what is that you have given? S number is initialized with 24, I think. S name is initialized with Pradeep, right? And marks you have initialized with 0, 0, 0, and total also 0, average is also 0. So what happens now? The memory associated with particular OB1 is going to be initialized at the time of creation itself, right? At the time of creation itself. How is it being possible here? The default constructor. It is going to be implicitly called. As I told, that constructor characteristic is it's going to be implicitly called at the time of instantiation. So when you are creating an object OB1, for OB1 what happened? The default constructor is called, and the memory which is being allocated for OB1 for its members are being initialized also with the values which you have given inside the default constructor. Now what happens? OB2. Now OB2 object is going to be created. For OB2 object also memory going to be allocated. Fine. Memory required for S number, name, and 3 subject marks, right? And total and average. Fine. But for this particular object, which constructor is going to be called? Parameterized constructor is going to be called, because you are passing what? You are passing parameters, right? The first parameter that you are passing 15 to A, and A is going to initialize to S number. So you can see 15, and Raju will be copied into its name, and array, AR array, this array, entire array you are passing. If you have to pass an array as an argument, what do? You just pass the name of that array, that's it, right? The entire thing will be passed, right? So this array is going to be copied into C, and C will be copied into M. So that M is going to get now 87, 98, and 78. And the total is 0, 0.0. This is what you have initialized inside the parameter system. Then you have another object to be created, that is OB3, right? In the next statement, right? So here for OB3 also memory is going to be allocated, required for S number, S name, and 3 subject marks, and total and average, right? But for this particular object, which constructor is going to be called? Copy constructor is going to be called, because you're passing what? OB2. OB2 is what? An object, right? Same class object, right? So in copy constructor, you may have seen the reference which you have, that reference is going to act as an alias name to OB2. When I say ref.s number, it is nothing but OB.s number going to be copied into S number, means OB3, because for whom this copy constructor is being called for OB3. So inside the copy constructor, the statement that I have written, I'm just reading out here because I'm able to scroll up. So just go through it. So what did I write there? I wrote there S number equal to ref.s number. That S number is going to refer to whom? OB3's S number. So in OB3's S number, what do you get? Ref.s number means OB2.s number. It's nothing but 15, right? So the next statement that you have is nothing but strcpy of S name, comma, ref.s name. Ref.s name is for what? Raju. So this Raju is going to be copied into whom? The name. Name is nothing but OB3's name, right? So in OB3's name, Raju is going to be copied. Similarly, you have for loop with the help of which you are assigning all the ref.m of I into m of I. So when you say just m of I is referring to whom? OB3. But when you say ref dot m of I is referring to whom? OB2. It means OB2's values are going to be copied. 87, 98, and then 79. All that is going to be copied, right? And then total average also being copied, right? So you can see OB2 and OB3 are same because for OB3 are passing OB2. So copy constructor, what it does, it will simply copy the OB2 values into OB3. You can see both are replicas, right? OB3 is a replica of OB2, right? Both are equal, right? Now, when you are trying to display OB3 calcium display, you will get all these values, right? 15, Raju, and all kind of thing. And OB2 also will give the same because OB3 and OB2 are equal. Then OB1, when you say it's going to get the values which are available inside the OB1, right? After the calculation of the 3 subject marks being computed through the calci, and the entire details are going to be displayed. We can just execute and see the result of the same, right? I hope this is clear. The execution of this particular program. Here in this particular example, I am trying to demonstrate the class concept, object concept, right? Class, object concept, and then constructors concept, right? Default, parameterize, and copy. All 3 type of constructors I am able to here demonstrate in this particular example. I hope this is clear to all of you. Now we will try to execute and then see the result, right? So when you execute this, you can see the output here. Right. You have created OB1 first, OB2, OB3. Okay. So for all such objects, as I have explained you before, memory is going to be allocated and their respective constructors are going to be called and they're going to be initialized and out. Then the sequence in which you are calling the calci displays OB3. So OB3 details will be displayed here first. You can see here. This is OB3 and this is OB2, both the same. This is OB1. Okay. OB3 calci display, OB2 calci display, then OB1. So OB1 is 24 you have initialized, right? Pradeep and 00, right? Whereas here 15 and Raju and 87 and all kind of things that you have given, which are being after accumulating, you are getting the total value and average of the same is being displayed. These two are equal, so you get the same values, right? I hope this is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now we'll try to look at the destructor concept, right? In C++, we have destructor, which is going to be implicitly called whenever an object scope is going out, right? So whenever the object scope is out, what do you mean the scope? Scope is the part of the text in which it is accessible, right? So when the scope is not there, let us say, fine. The memory which has been associated with a particular object is, if still retained, is of waste, rather, right? It is of no use. If you can return that memory which is going to occupy the particular object to the system, then that memory can be utilized for some other user, right? That is the main idea behind having the destructors in C++. Fine. At the time of execution itself, right? During the execution itself, right? Whenever an object scope is out, it is not accessible. When it is not accessible, the memory also with that particular object is of no use. Then why it is required to be associated still with that particular object? Rather, if it is returned to the system, then it can be utilized for some other purpose, right? So this is the main motive behind having the destructors in C++. So the advantage of destructor is, as I said, to deallocate the memory, right? To deallocate the memory associated with an object when its scope is out. When its scope is out. Okay. So here the characteristic of destructor, if you see, it is implicitly called. You need not to call. Like how constructor is going to be implicitly called, similarly destructor is also going to be implicitly called. It is implicitly preceded with tilde operator. Preceded with tilde, TILDE. We say negation also. You can see this symbol on keyboard, probably on apostrophe, tilde operator. Second rule is it is a function declared under public. And another rule is it is a function with non-return type and arguments. It means it doesn't have arguments also. There is no return type specification and there are no arguments at all. So it is only one kind, right? There are no multiple destructors in the class. It will be a single destructor so with any particular class, right? So these are the three rules. Fine. Name of the destructor is same as that of the class name. Preceded with tilde operator. It is a function declared under public mode, and it is a function with non-return type and arguments. If you look at the syntax of the same, class name under public mode, you can see tilde operator, then followed by the class name. Then if you are writing the code outside of the class, how do you write? Class name, scope resolution operator, tilde operator, class name, right? And you will have certain code. Generally, the code which you have inside this destructor is to deallocate the memory, right? Is to deallocate the memory. How do you deallocate the memory? You have a delete operator in C++. So if you pass the address to the delete operator, right? What is the address operator? Ampersand. Ampersand of any variable value, right? So the memory is going to be deallocated. When you say delete address of that particular variable, that variable's memory, which is being associated with that particular object, is going to be deallocated. It means returned to the system, right? So delete is one of the restore operator, right? Delete is one of the restore operator. We have new and delete are the restore operators in C++. So delete is to deallocate and new is to allocate during the runtime, right? Delete used to allocate, deallocate, right? Deallocate means deletion, right? returning the memory occupied with particular object or variable to the system, deallocate the memory, right? Okay. Now let us look at the demonstration of the same with the same example here. So in the same example, student class example, I have added here destructor. You can see, right? This is the destructor, right? Can you see this? You can see the name of the destructor is starting with tilde. You can see this is a tilde operator here. Tilde followed by the same class name, student, and declared under public mode. It doesn't have any return type and no arguments. And here I am mentioning its code. You can see. So when I'm writing the code of the function outside of the class, how do I write? Return type, class name, scope resolution operator, then function. No return type, so just start with class, scope resolution operator, then function name is tilde student. And here I have written one statement in order to know that whether it has reached or not, right? Basically, what do I do? Why do I need the destructor? To deallocate the memory being occupied by that particular object. So when I create an object of the class, as I have told you in the previous demonstration, that the memory required for all its members is going to be allocated and it's going to be retained, okay, until the execution of the program. But once its scope is out, it is not accessible, so it is better to deallocate. That is what our main reason behind having the destructor. So the memory to be deallocated are which are occupied by its members. So what are its members? You have S number, you have total, S name, average, marks. All that you can deallocate, right, with the help of delete operator. So I can say here delete ampersand S number. If I have to delete any variables in a memory, how do I deal with the help of its address? Address operator is ampersand. So delete space ampersand S number. So the memory occupied with S number will be returned to the system. Similarly, S name. S name is a character array. For array, you just pass the array name. Array name itself will hold the address of the entire array. Array name holds the base address of the array. Array name acts as a pointer, right? So array name itself is address. So just pass delete S name. That's it, right? No need to pass any ampersand. For total, you say ampersand total, ampersand average. That's it, okay? And for marks also, you can say delete M. That's it, right? Because it is also an array, right? Okay. So delete S name is an array, so just pass the name. That's it. Delete M. M is an array, so just pass the M. And all the memory which has been allocated with a particular object, is going to be deallocated now, right? In order to know whether it has reached, because that memory which has been deallocated will be, when returned to the system, it's not going to be seen to us. Shall we be able to see that memory been deallocated? No, we can't see, right? Even allocation also, I have explained you with the help of example, right? But we don't see that, right? Fine. So in order to know that it has reached, I'm giving a statement here, destructor is reached. Right? Now let us run the program and see. You can see here the output of the program. You can see destructor is reached. That statement you can see here, right? It means destructor is executed. As I told, the object scope when is going out, automatically the destructor is going to be called, and the memory, if you have written the code to deallocate, then the memory is going to be deallocated rather. And in order to know that whether it has reached or not, I have given a statement destructor is reached. So it has, you can see, been visible. Right? I hope it's clear to all of you.